What's going on, guys? My name is Tom from Dreadlabs, and today I'm going to show you how to make realistic ink bleeds for your paper textures.
Dreadlabs.
So I recently released another product on the website, and it's a paper pack which contains a lot of paper textures and rips, and I thought it would be cool to show you guys how to make your designs and make them look realistic on this paper texture, because a lot of people seem to have a bit of trouble with it. So I have here 3 ways to go about this, and I'm going to say this up front. The bottom one is done with a plugin from BlkMarket, and you have to pay for this. Yeah, just so you know, and the other 2 ones are just in Photoshop itself. In our document, we only have a black background and some white text. And let's just drag in a paper texture from the Dreadlabs paper pack. We have over 64 that we can choose from, but let's just go with this one here. And scale it up to 100%. Make sure it's at the bottom. So if you prefer to have this a bit darker, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go press Command M. And this will bring up the curves menu, and you'll see that there's a lot of light values in here. So let's just lower the curve around this point to make it a bit darker but still preserve these details. So the first way we can make a little bit of an ink bleed is through a box blur, and we're just going to rasterize this. Go to filter, Gaussian blur. So parts like here on the left, the text is not really connecting, so if we increase the blur, it will eventually start blending in with each other. I think somewhere like this. And for now, let's just add a black background on the back here, like this. So now it's a bit too blurry, so let's add a threshold and sharpen this image a bit more. Maybe like so. So these ink bleeds will connect. And now we're going to grab these 3 layers together and we're going to merge them. But now we still have the black background, which we're going to remove by double clicking here. And by clicking this layer, let's just drag this slider in, which will remove all the black from the layer. Now we're going to go and convert this to a smart object. And since the edges are way too sharp now, let's just go to filter and box blur. And usually a maximum radius of 3 pixels is fine. And I'm gonna go for 3. So now to have this blend in with the background texture, let's just double click here. And here where it says underlying layer, hold Alt or Option and drag the right part of this slider in. And this will make it so all the darker colors, so these, will blend in with this current layer. So the more you drag this in, the more darker parts of the background texture will blend in with our white letters. So yeah, I would usually go and leave it at somewhere like this. But it depends on the color, really. So let's go on to the next one. So I already rasterized this, and so what we're going to do is we want to displace this. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to make a displacement map out of this paper texture. So we'll grab the bottom layer, and let's just go to duplicate layer. Make sure that it's going to a new document and call this displacement map. Alright, so now we have a new document with this paper texture. And what you want to do is you want to get a little bit of more contrast into this image. So let's just double click on the curves that we had made earlier and make sure that we have 2 curves or 2 points to increase a bit of the contrast here, so the difference here becomes a bit bigger. And we're going to save this as a PSD file called displacement map. I just called it displacement map 2 because I already had one. Now we're going to select the layer that we want to displace, and that's this one in the middle. And we'll go to filter, distort, displace. And usually a value of 10 by 10 is fine, but you might be able to experiment with it if you are curious. And let's just double click on the PSD file that we made earlier and open it. And as you can see, it gets these grungy edges here. And if we double click and blend this in the same way we did with the first one, you can see that this is also a way to get a bit of more grungy effect to have it blend in with your paper. And obviously you can combine the both of these. So if you would want this distressed edge, but you want it a little bit more, smoother, just go to blur, box blur, and I would usually hold it at 1. Yeah, and this gives it also like a pretty nice result. Now for the bottom one, we're going to use a Photoshop action package made by BlkMarket, which is called Trash Machine. And Trash Machine gives us a little bit more options to play around with, and it's also a bit more complicated, but I'm gonna try and talk you through it. So let's just go to my actions, and I've downloaded it here, and I'm gonna use the setting Custom Advanced and run it. So what we did earlier with the Gaussian blur and having stuff blend together, so this uses a field blur instead of a Gaussian blur. And a field blur, basically you can decide where you want stuff to blur more, like here, for example. But you don't want this line to get too blurry, for example, so we're going to click and add another point here and reduce the field blur here. And now we can basically decide where we want ink bleeds to happen and where we don't want ink bleeds to happen. So let's just go here. Maybe like here at the ending, we want a bit more of a harder blur. I think this is fine for now. Let's just click OK. For the radius, I tend to lower this a bit to, I think, 2.5. Play around with this threshold again. Like this. Just click OK and let BlkMarket do its job. So one thing that you get with this Trash Machine is a really nice package of displacement maps, which I'm going to use now. So they have 10 of these grunge maps, and they have like these dirt parts going around. And it's basically like a grunge map that you can use as a displacement map. Let's just use one and I'll show you what happens. So with this easy effect, within a few clicks, without really having to worry about anything, most of the effects that we've done here are already applied. But as you can see, with more of a detailed effect, and you can choose where you want the blurs. So yeah, I really learned a lot about ink bleeds and distressing my objects by playing around with this Trash Machine plugin. So I'll put a link up in the description if you want to get it, because I think it's definitely worth your money. And let's just drag in the slider here. Like this. And there you have it. 3 different ways to play around with your ink bleeds and make it blend in with the paper texture that you're using. So the link to the paper texture package will be in the description, as well as the BlkMarket plugin. I hope you guys learned anything, and if you have any questions or suggestions for new videos, please let me know in the comments or join us on Discord. And I want to take this special time to thank my Patreons. If you don't know, you can download all of my project files from my tutorials on my Patreon page. So please do consider if you want to support me and making me be able to do this full time by joining me on Patreon. There's also a small discount in the Dreadlabs web shop if you become a patron, as well as some Discord privileges. So yeah, I highly encourage you to at least check it out, but don't feel obligated to become one. Yeah, and for now, I hope you enjoy working with paper textures, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.